Hey friend, welcome to my podcast, The Fit Soul. I'm your host, Amy Ramsey. In this podcast, we will be discussing soul-filled strategies to unleash your confidence, increase your energy, and all the things healthy lifestyle. If you're a Christian woman who is ready to reach your God-given potential, walk worthy of your calling with abundant joy and energy, girlfriend, you are in the right spot. I mean, you only have one life to live. You might as well maximize it. Buckle in, and thanks for listening.
For those of you who miss your grandfathers, you miss their wisdom, you miss their stories, and there's just something really precious about those conversations. Oh, I am right there with you. All of my grandparents have gone on to be with the Lord. And so when I met Mr. George, he's 92, I met him on the beach one day and we just instantly connected, but he kind of instantly connects with everyone. So I can't say that it was something special with me. And his memory is so sharp and he just started sharing stories. He's got so many stories and we've gotten to know each other. We love to watch the sunset together. And I asked him, I said, you know what? I would love to just get you on my podcast. I actually put him on social media, like on my personal Facebook post. I'm like, oh, it's not Mr. George. He told me this story. And so many of you were like, oh, I'd love to hear more about him, or I'd love to hear his stories. So I talked to him. I said, come get on my podcast. He was like, sure. He doesn't even know what a podcast is. He didn't even know what we were doing. Like he was just talking and I'm like, wait a minute. I got to push play to record and start. He's like, what? Okay. But the funniest thing is when I picked him up and he said, I've got a treat for us. And I said, okay. And I said, what do you have? Because my homemade wine. I'm like, okay. He had homemade wine in a water bottle. He had it in a plastic bag. And a little bit for me and a little bit for him, a little red wine. And he shares a little bit about that in the podcast of how he started making it over 80 years ago with his dad. So anyway, fascinating stories. Oh my goodness, this is going to just be a trip down memory lane. And for you, it might just be the warm and fuzzy of you missing your grandpa or your pawpaw or your granddaddy. So enjoy this podcast with my friend, Mr. George Thompson.
Hello and welcome back to the Fit Soul podcast. I have a very special guest today. My friend, Mr. George Thompson, is joining me on the podcast or the YouTube, wherever you're seeing this. And I just can't wait to tell you about him. I met him on the beach, walking on the beach one day, and he started talking. And he's 92 years old. And he has a memory as sharp as a tack. We became fast friends, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we became fast friends. We love to watch the sunset together. He's my sunset date, along with Randy. Mr. George is my sunset date. And we've been talking about recording this podcast for a while, and we finally got around to it. I'm proud of us. What do you think? We did it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so you got to tell, before we even get started, he said, I went to pick him up and he said, well, I was in the bathroom. I went to get a treat. And I said, what'd you get? What treat? And he held out, you ready? A water bottle, but it's not filled with water, is it?
No.
What is it filled with?
Homemade wine.
All right. So you can't see this if you're not watching the video. We're going to do a little cheers. He made us some wine. And when did you make this? How long ago did you make this?
At least 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But I had some a while back. I was drinking that. I looked at it and I thought, wow, that's 11 years old.
You know what? Does time fly?
It does.
At 92 years old, you can really remember. Your memory is so sharp, and I love to hear your stories. And I know that my listeners are going to really enjoy just some fun stories that you have, but also just some words of wisdom that you infuse. And so, anyway, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to, he's at my house, and we're drinking homemade wine.
Yeah.
He's kind of a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And he's a bit of a local celebrity. It is so funny to walk on the beach with him or to sit up at the pier. Everybody knows Mr. George. So tell us a little bit about yourself and just a little bit of backstory about who you are.
Well, I was born in Santa Rosa Beach.
Mm-hmm.
But it was called Santa Rosa at that time. They didn't add beach until in the 50s. But anyhow, I lost my mother when I was 9 months old, so my father raised me. So he...
Now, how old was your father when you were born?
He was either 48 or 49.
So he was a little bit older when he met you.
He was 38 years old when he got married,
mm-hmm.
and they still had 10 children. So that gives you an idea. Funny thing it was, he told me, he said, if my mother hadn't died of appendicitis, he says, you wouldn't have been the last one. And I was number 12 as it was. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So she had 12 children?
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
6 girls, 6 boys.
Oh, man. All natural.
And I had one half sister that was 20 years older than me.
Okay.
And a half brother was 22 years older than me. I got quite a story to tell about my half brother. He left home when my mother died, and he went back to Canada because he had more his mother's relatives there, and so he never came back to Florida for 17 or 18 years, and I heard of him and everything, but I never knew him or anything. And I'd gone to Milwaukee and spent the summer there, and then back to Elgin, Illinois, and working there. And I came home for Christmas, and I was out at the grocery store waiting for my sister to come from Jacksonville on a bus. And anyhow, when she gets out of a cab, and she hollers over to me, says, George, come over here, I want you to meet my new brother. And I thought, how do you get a new brother? I kept thinking, maybe you got a husband, and I couldn't think of brother. Anyhow, it just so happens my brother Jimmy had decided to come home for...
This is your stepbrother?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was half brother.
Half brother.
Yeah. We both had the same mother, but anyhow, he decided to come to Florida for Christmas this year. And anyhow, he stopped by my sister's place in Illinois a day or two after I'd left to come here. And he comes on to Santa Rosa or to Florida. And at that time, there was no bus, only once or twice a day from the Puniac Springs to Santa Rosa. So he got there to the Puniac, and he was going to have to wait about 5 or 6 hours for a bus. And he heard this lady calling about getting a cab to go to Santa Rosa. So he asked her if he could share the ride and split the expenses. She said, yeah. So they was about halfway over here. He's looking at her luggage, and he says, was your maiden name Thompson? She said, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
He said, well, I'm your brother.
What are the odds? What are the odds, right?
And that was the first time she had met him, too.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so they got out of the cab there. She hollered over to me and said, George, come over here. I want you to meet my new brother. So how do you get a new brother? And I figured that was quite a coincidence.
That is quite a coincidence. So you had your mother had 12 children, so she must have been married previously. And then so there's 2 half siblings that are older, and then there's 10 of you guys did.
Yeah.
And your father raised you.
Right
here in Santa Rosa Beach now. So that's just for those that if you're not familiar with this area, it's in the panhandle of Florida. It's between, what do you say, Destin and Panama City?
Yeah, or
Destin
yeah,
Fort Walton.
Destin or Fort Walton Beach,
Yeah.
Panama City.
Destin and Fort Walton Beach.
Destin's getting pretty well known now, but at the time it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful area of Florida. It's sugary sand, white, beautiful sugary sand, beautiful water. It's just really a pretty, pretty area. And he's grown up here. You've seen a ton of changes. Oh my gosh, because it has exploded. There's so much going on here now.
81 years ago, I had 40 acres of land here, bought and paid for.
Oh, wow. Where?
A Sugar Drive
Oh, really?
over there, real close where they have that man-made lake where they do the water skiing,
Yeah.
racing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I was going to do, but I had plans. I cut fence posts. I was going to fence it in, grow something, and because at that time they had open range here, and if you grew anything, you had to have it fenced in because there was cattle and pigs all over the place.
Yeah.
And anyhow,
Well, I love all of your stories, and you can share any story you want. One story that I've heard you share a couple of times, it was you met a lady. Did you have a paper route? Was that it? You had a paper route.
oh yeah,
Yeah, tell me about that.
I sold a grit paper just once a week, and I didn't have very many customers, but that I probably made 50 cents a week, but I only had one day, and 50 cents was a lot of money then. And
What could you buy with 50 cents?
well, I don't know, but just a short time before that, I remember at the end of the Depression, my father going to work on what they call the WPA for 50 cents a day.
Wow.
And there was people all over the country was doing that. I mean,
With 10
that
cents a
gives you
day.
an idea of what money was worth then.
Yeah.
And anyhow, so I had this paper out, and I had this one customer. She was around 90 years old then, and she was
And how old were you when you had your paper route?
probably about, I was somewhere between 8 and 12. I
Okay.
can't remember just what year, because I know I was delivering paper to her before World War II. So, and during World War II. Anyhow, she was, and she would tell me, she didn't go into too much detail, but a little bit about things that went on during the Civil War, about that, especially afterwards, the things that the carpetbaggers did that she said was on call for, and so on. And then she would always tell me, she says, when you grow up, she says, don't go to Destin and be a fisherman. She said, it's no kind of a life. So, anyhow, she was, and
you did it. You remembered that, and you took her advice. I think
Yeah.
that's super interesting.
yeah, and I wanted to go see her and tell her I got this job up in Elgin, Illinois, and told my sister I was going to go over to see her, and she told me she just passed away. So she was, I think, 96 or 97
Wow.
years old when she died.
Wow.
But
But that's just so interesting how long ago that was, that you were able to get that much history from the Civil War. And think about the little children that you're talking to now, and you can talk to them about World War II. And when they're older, they're going to be like, I knew this man a long time ago, and he told me about World War II.
yeah,
And it'll be so far removed.
it was, I was on the beach at Santa Rosa when I got the news that Japan bombed Pearl Harbor.
Now, how old were you?
I was 10 years and 1 week old. I was 10 years old December 1st, and that happened December 7th of 41. I was 10 years old December 1st. And, but
Well, do you remember what you felt at 10 years old to hear that we were at war?
well, yeah, I mean, I thought, well, it's not right here, but it's still, I mean, it's always hearing almost like it says in the Bible, there'll always be wars and rumors of wars, and just, but then it kind of gradually, just one little event at a time, and you kind of, I guess you kind of adapt to it. I often feel, I think about these poor kids that grow up actually in a war zone, and I think, I remember just a few things I seen here because well, it was might say it was a war zone here on the coast because there was German subs were right up here trying to get as many delivery ships because they took supplies to all the countries. And
so could you see, okay, I think this is a really dumb question. Don't laugh. Could you see the submarines? I mean, could you know that they were on the coastline, or did they learn about it later?
I didn't I didn't realize because my nephew and I was on the beach, and what got our attention was this explosion, and it shook the beach. There's 3 of them, and the only thing I can figure it was well, then a few minutes later, all these planes come and they started dropping. I thought they were bombs, but they were torpedoes. They were trying to. I found out that the ship had been torpedoed, but it didn't sink it. And what we heard was a ship dropping these depth charges trying to get the sub. We just stood there watching the planes come in real low from the west, and they'd drop these torpedoes, and they'd come down, they'd hit the water, and you could see the water splash out, and they'd glance off the water, and it looked like it's almost going right toward the tail of the plane again, and it would settle down, go down the water, and there was a lot of that.
That's crazy.
And we just, at first we thought there was just some kind of practice or something, and then I found out a week later that the ship had been torpedoed, and they was trying to get this German sub there with dropping those torpedoes. But then shortly after that, they started patrolling the beach on horseback, and there was a while there they didn't want anybody on the beach before 7 o'clock in the morning, and I got run off a few times.
Did you sneak out there anyway?
Huh?
Did you sneak out there anyway?
Yeah, I felt kind of bitter about it. Chased me off the beach one day. And this oyster lake, it was those dune lakes, they get sometimes 4 or 5 feet above the Gulf. When they break through the sandbar, they're just like a river going out. They'll drop that 4 or 5 feet in a day's time. So there's a lot of water goes out of there in a short time. But anyhow, they chased me off the beach. So I went over the sand dune, hid behind the sand dune. As soon as they got on down the beach, I went down, I dug this little trench so the lake could go out. It was full, real high. And I knew what would happen because I'd done that a lot of times when I'd see the lake get high. Anyhow, and so then I left, and the soldiers was telling out to the grocery store that said that they went down the beach and said they come back, and the thing looked like a river. They said their horses wouldn't cross it. They had to go all the way around the lake in the woods to get back to where they wanted to go.
How old were you?
Well, I must have been about
11, 12?
Let's see, I would be 10 years. I was probably about 11 years old.
Yeah, that's hilarious. You were a little mischievous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
So you were a little mischievous.
Oh yeah.
For sure. All boy. Oh my goodness. Another thing that I love to hear you talk about is during World War II, they'd have a movie night at the beach.
Oh yeah, they had a little army base. As the crow flies, it'd be about 1 mile from where I live, and all they did there was they had a big, I call it a barge balloon, a real big balloon, and they would put it up in the air, and then halfway down from the balloon to the ground, they'd had this big target, a 25 by 25 foot screen, and they'd hold that the boom up near. They'd hold that there, and the planes would practice shooting at that, and their bullets were color coded, so they could bring that down at nighttime, and they could look at it and see who made the hits and who didn't, and so that was kind of. I got, of course, I was just a kid. I go over there and bug those soldiers, and they was most of them were nice to me. I think I kind of got on the nerve of a couple of them. Kidding him about his cooking, and he didn't. He
You didn't appreciate that? Oh my goodness.
I knew a little bit about cooking because I had to cook for my dad and I there when I was about that age. And
Yeah.
he was doing something. I told him, "You're making a mess out of that fish." And he didn't like it very much. Anyhow, but
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, okay. Then they had that base there, so USO would for entertainment for them because we're out here in the boondocks, you might say. There's nothing here. The closest theater would be Fort Walton or Defuniak Springs,
wow.
and 20 some miles for one and 30 some for the other. Anyhow, the USO would bring in a big screen and a projector and show an outdoor movie. I think it was, I'm not positive. I think it was once a month. I don't think it was once a week. But anyhow, they would put word out what day they're going to have any of the local people wanted to come. They wanted to sit in a chair to bring their own chair, and so it was all outside.
That's fine.
And anyhow, so
That's fine.
the only one movie I can remember I think it was Swinging on a Star, or anyhow.
I don't remember. I don't know. I haven't heard of that one.
Anyhow, I remember a couple of lines there, and it says, he's singing, and it says, "Or would you rather be a mule," or something like that. And it was, they had all pretty, the latest movies, Yeah, I mean, otherwise, I might, if I got to see a movie once or twice a year, that was it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you a question then. I can't remember when things came out. Did you grow up? How old were you when a TV became a household thing? TV.
Oh, okay. I was married and had children. I was living in Flushing, Michigan, when we got our first TV set,
Wow.
and that was in early 50s,
Okay. And what year were you born?
31.
31. So right in the Depression, Great Depression.
I started out pretty young.
You probably don't remember much of it, do you?
I remember my dad going to work for 50 cents a day, and I knew that wasn't very much money, but we grew. Done a lot of fishing, and he had a garden done. In fact, he used to grow vegetables and take them into Destin and then sell them. And a lot of times they'd give him fish, and sometimes they'd give him money. And he said sometimes they didn't have any money, so he said he'd give them the fish or the vegetables anyhow, because he said they wouldn't be any good if he took them back home, So he said some of them paid him years later, and some of them never did pay him, and things like that. But I went to see it's kind of another coincidence. I was fishing down here a few years ago, and there's a couple guys fishing down the beach, and my daughter came down. I wanted her to go down and see if they'd catch anything, and she didn't want to, so she sent me down. And so I went down, got talking to them a little bit, and one thing and another. I happened to mention this Red and Bronson. The guy bust out laughing. Oh, he said, "That's my grandfather," he said. And here it was his nickname was Salty Bronson. He was quite salty. He was kind of a devil himself. I mean, he didn't put up with much nonsense. And yeah, I tell you a story about he had this. He said they'd find a big school of fish and they'd put this big seine around and pull it in and draw them in and then dip the fish out. And he said at that time, every once in a while, he said about time he'd get ready to put his net out, Coast Guard would come along, they want to check out everything, and he said sometimes time they got through, he said then the fish would be gone. He said just one time, I guess he had it, and well, he was telling me this, and he said they said something about hold up on something, and I guess he just let out a blue streak to him with bad language, and the guy started coming from the Coast Guard on the beach out to the boat there, and my brother was out in the water with the seine, and he sees him coming, and he hollered, and my brother, he was built like they say, like a brick, you know what? Anyhow, he says, told this guy, he says, I'll have you know, he says, you got to go through me before you talk to see my captain. He said, this Red Bronson was, that's the first I'd ever heard about it. He said, from then on, he said, Frank was his favorite crew member because he stuck up for him, I mean, you know, and
Yeah.
and oh, another funny story was speaking of wine. Well, my dad, at the end of the Depression there, he'd peddled vegetables and stuff in Destin. He also made wine, and he'd sell a little wine on the side too. And he had a few jugs of wine in the back of the wagon there, and it was Red and Bronson. Well, it's the first I'd ever heard about this, just 15, 20 years ago. And he said one time, he said us boys would slip along behind the wagon there and she swiped one of his jugs of wine. He said, one time we got this jug, he said, I thought we was going to die. He said, we got so sick. And I remember my dad saying there was something you could, if you took it, the same time you had a drink, you wouldn't want to drink for 6 months. It'd make you that sick.
Oh my goodness.
And he must have
taken
knew,
that.
Anyhow, the funny part of it was, he said about 3 weeks later, his mother had my father in for dinner because he's in Destin there. And he said he overheard him telling his mother, he says, well, he says, I haven't lost any more wine lately, he said. After giving him that bad jug of wine, they didn't take it him.
That's hilarious.
And yeah.
You have got the best stories. All right. So I want everybody to know a couple things. And I just think it's beautiful. How many years were you married to your lovely wife?
69.
69. You don't hear that number very often. That's beautiful.
And
how many kids did y'all have?
yeah, that was
How many kids did y'all have?
4.
4?
2 girls, 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost a daughter, I guess about 6 years ago.
Mm.
She was just 64, and she would have been 70 this year. So
Yeah.
and she got cancer in pancreas,
Mm.
and anyhow,
I'm sorry.
yeah. I was going to say that my very first memory that I'm pretty sure it's my first memory. I was out in my yard underneath this magnolia tree,
Mm-hmm.
playing with a ground rattler.
A snake?
Yeah, it's a picnic rattlesnake.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a poisonous snake.
Oh yeah, and he was all coiled up between my legs. I sat down with the legs out like this.
How old were you?
I figure I was about somewhere between 2 and 3 years old.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's just the way I was sitting there with my legs out, and he was right in between them. And I had this stick. I could still see him. I'd go, and his head would follow my hand as I went around him like this in a circle. He'd follow. I just I don't know how long I've been. My brother seen me out there. He kept wondering what I was doing out there so long. He'd come out there and said when he reached down to pick me up, he said the snake actually tried to bite him. It struck him, but it never did. I was just fascinated by the way his head would follow my hand around, and
That's crazy.
then I don't know if that was. I think that was the first. And then the next memory, we had canna lilies on the west side of our house, and I was always trying to catch butterflies and stuff, the boys, and yeah, I see it. Oh boy, a lot of those butterflies out there today. I'm going to get me one. I finally caught one. Found out it was a bumblebee. And I still,
Did you get stung?
yeah, I still remember opening up my hand, three big whelps, and I thought, I think I learned the difference between a butterfly and a bumblebee.
I bet you did learn that real fast. Oh my goodness.
But I can remember that, and I remember playing with a snake, and that's my first two memories and
Playing with a snake and getting bitten by bumblebees.
yeah, yeah.
You know what? One of the things that cracks me up, because you look so young and you've got such a sharp memory, and people ask you all the time about what's your secret. And I want you to say what it is. And I'm telling you, let me be your agent, because you could make a lot of money. Okay. Tell them what's the secret, what you think your secret is.
Well, I actually think, I think it's flaxseed oil capsules. My neighbor, Will Pratt, about 12, 14 years ago, he got me started taking it. He said, it's supposed to be good for your heart, keep you from having a heart attack. And I'd had heart surgery in 2008.
I didn't know that.
And anyhow, and I started taking that flaxseed capsules, and about 2 or 3 years later, my daughter come over one day and she asked me, she says, what happened to that bald spot you used to have? I said, I don't know. I said, when I see it getting bald, I said, I quit looking at it. I said, you got to use 2 mirrors, to see the back of your head. And my wife heard this, and she went digging around. She got out photos, and I say, photos look like somewhere between 2 and 3 inches, just skin on the back one. It all grew back.
So he says,
and another thing, my eyesight got better.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm going to go buy me some flaxseed oil caplets. Now I take flaxseed, I put it in my smoothie, but you take it in a pill, like a capsule.
The capsule, it's got the oil in it. And I figured take a lot of flaxseed to make it.
That's true.
Capsule
That's
oil.
true. Yeah.
And
I'm telling you, you can make a lot of money. You go on there looking as handsome as you do at 92 and sharing all your stories and telling it's flaxseed. All right. So
I got pictures to prove that
yeah,
I had a bald spot there. And
well, you don't, you got a full head of hair now. All right. Last night when we were, okay, I have a feeling that this is going to be part 1 of a podcast. I have a feeling people are going to come back in and say, tell us, we want Mr. George back. And so I hope maybe you'll come back in, but I want to know, what would you recommend? Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel like you've had a good life, a joyful life, a happy life?
Yeah, I'd say anybody that says there's things when they look back, if they had to do over and knew what they do now, they wouldn't do it.
No doubt.
But I thought I had more good things come my way. I mean, I had one thing. Well, I figured the first one was when they figured I was drowned and they brought me back. But then
Okay, so when he was a baby, he was
about
10 months old.
10, 11 months old, yeah.
He drowned, officially drowned, and didn't officially die, but his sister thought he was dead.
Yeah, she sent my brother to her brother to tell my father he was justice of the peace here and he was holding court. She sent him to tell him that I had drowned. And she said the time he got home, I was up playing around. But 2 weeks before that, they taught him in school what to do if somebody drowns, how you pump the water out and get them started breathing again. But
Reckon God had a plan for your life?
I think
Wanted you here?
that's what a lot of people tell me when I tell them that, and I
Yeah.
said, well, it could be. And
Definitely. So what would you, if you were to give a piece of advice to someone who would look at you and think, wow, he's 92 and he's had a good life and you're happy. You're a happy person. You're a joyful person. What would, if you were to give some pieces of advice to somebody younger, what would you want to impart to them? What would you want to say?
well, I tell a lot of people this one thing. I says, you should get as much out of life as you can every day, because you don't know how many days you're going to have here.
That's right.
And anyhow,
Every day is a gift. So
Yeah.
we were, you know, what was really special to me? Last night we were watching the sunset. So let me just paint a little picture for you here. We are in a small area called Blue Mountain Beach. It's on Santa Rosa, in the Santa Rosa, but it's Blue Mountain Beach is our little piece, and it's small. And there is, we've got a little, our little beach accesses, and several of the neighbors meet for sunset almost every night, as long as it's not raining. And some people are part-timers here, and but Mr. George is a nice staple there, and there's some folks that live here full-time. And there was a visitor last night. One of our neighbors' father was in. Do you remember what he said? He was so sweet, Michael. He went on and on about every day is a gift. And he just kept saying, he goes, I'm just so thankful. I am so thankful. And it just was so beautiful just to see him exuding with gratitude, and it was contagious. I was like, yeah, oh my gosh, I think I want to be more thankful too, just watching him. And I know that you're a grateful person, and that's something that's just part of who you are, but taking each day seriously as a gift every single day.
yeah, well, I had a lot of thinking to do when I lost my wife. Of course, I knew, I mean, it wasn't real sudden like. I mean, I knew it was coming, but I thought I should be thankful for the years we had together, you know, and because we had more than the average. I mean, actually, from the time I first really got to know her till she passed away, I knew her for 70 years.
Yeah.
But we was married for 69 years, so 70.
Mhm.
Funny part of it was, when I met her, I was going with her sister.
Yeah.
Anyhow, she
You old scoundrel, you.
well, not, I wasn't the only one.
Now you're going to say that about your precious wife.
Well,
Are you calling her a scoundrel? Oh,
she, no, when I met her, I'd been going with her sister about 5 months,
mhm.
and she told me later, she thought things was just going kind of slow between her sister and I, so she's going to make a play for it and make her sister jealous.
Yeah.
Well, I got the same idea, but neither one of us said anything to the other one. Well, like I said, she had one advantage over her sister. Her sister was still going to school that year yet.
Yeah.
So we had the whole day to say the whole day to eventually get into mischief.
Well, did the other sister ever get over it
Oh,
eventually?
yeah, I think so.
After 20, 30, 40 years or so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She,
Well,
I think she was used to, I felt a little bit sorry for her because she was used to her older sister. Things seemed to come her way more so than some of the others. And
yeah.
anyhow, but
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this podcast up. What would one piece of advice, if you could give one solid, some words of wisdom after 92 years on this earth, what would be a piece of advice you could give to us?
Well, I'll put it this way. Something got me thinking, trying to think how this come about now. And well, there's too many things that just I guess the one phrase that would answer the question is, with God, nothing's impossible.
That's right.
For all things are possible.
That's right.
I mean, and I was trying to think how this, what really got me. Oh, I know, it was, I was, maybe people have never thought about this, but I was listening to this message one time. They talked about when the Lord spoke to Moses through the burning bush,
Mm-hmm.
and said the bush burned, it wasn't consumed. And just that one time, that when I heard that, I thought, that's got to be the way he made the sun. All right, you stop and think, how can something be up there for all these, they think millions of years,
Mm-hmm.
and not burn out, not get enough weaker. I mean, it's the same life that I thought, well, if he can make a bush that will burn, not be consumed, why couldn't he make a sun that would burn, not be consumed?
Mm-hmm. That's right. He can do anything. All things are possible.
Yeah.
You move that mountain in our lives, the hard stuff, and to keep on going, right? And just to keep that faith and have that hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All right. You know what story I wanted you to share before we wrap up?
what's that?
The Indian woman.
Oh, okay.
This is a good one.
They got a road in the old, kind of north of the old town of Santa Rosa. They named it Indian Woman Road.
Why's that?
There's an Indian woman lived on this road,
Yeah.
and she was kind of unusual woman. She run around the house naked all the time.
How do you know that?
Well,
Was that the word on the street?
yeah, that.
Oh.
Anyhow, after all, I didn't deliver the paper was that way.
Okay.
But anyhow, and somebody come to her door. She come to the door, hold a towel up in front of her, and talk to them. But anyhow, they got ready to leave. Well, she just turned around and walk away, but she kept the towel in front of her, not behind her. So she give them
a little run for their money.
Yeah.
A little show. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So.
Well, Mr. George, thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories with me and now my audience. You are a delight and a treasure, and I'm so grateful that we're friends.
David, careful, I won't be able to get through the door.
You getting the big head over here? Oh my goodness. It has been so great.
You have the rest of this.
Oh, okay. So did we tell him about the wine? Did we start with that? Or he made some homemade wine and brought it over in this in a water bottle. I just love this. So anyway, thank you for the wine, the homemade wine, and the stories and your friendship. And will you come back on and be a guest with me again?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, you guys, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to these stories. And if you loved this, let me know. And then let me know what questions you have for Mr. George. I have a feeling we'll get some questions in and we'll come back with a follow-up podcast. All right, friends, thanks so much for being here. And we will see you same time. Actually, on Friday. On Friday, join me again, and I've got my faith-focused Friday podcast. Okay, have a great rest of your day. Bye, y'all.
Girlfriend, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'm so honored you come back every week and that you share the Fit Soul podcast with your friends and family. Every time you share my podcast on Instagram or Facebook, I do a little happy dance. Make sure you subscribe to the Fit Soul podcast where you'll never miss an episode. You can go to Podcast, Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode release. And just know, I truly love bringing you excellent content and great guests to provide you motivation and faith inspiration to help you walk worthy. And one of the ways you can help me is to go and leave the Fit Soul podcast a review. If you have just a moment, would you please go over and leave a review for the Fit Soul podcast? Thank you again. I love you. And here is your reminder. You are worthy. Until next time. Bye-bye.